Good day, everyone. I am Carlos Miguel Araño, and for today's discussion, we will be discussing the lesson 1 of the module 4, which is the Edgar's Dale Cone of Experiences. In the course outcome of this topic, we're going to learn what is the cone of experience, what are the sensory aids in the cone of experience, and what is its implication in teaching. Before we dive into our topic, let me first introduce who is Edgar Dale. So Edgar Dale was an American educator who developed the cone of experience, also known as the learning pyramid. He made several contributions to audio-visual instruction, including the methodology for analyzing the content of motion pictures. During the 1960s, Edgar Dale theorized that learners retain more information by what they do as opposed to what they heard, read, or observe. His research led to the development of cognitive experiences, and today, this learning by doing has become known as experiential learning or action learning. The principles of the cone is based on the relationship of various educational experiences to reality. There are several ways on how a learner acquire knowledge, one of which is through reading, through demonstration, and the most basic one or the most common one is the direct experience, because through direct experience the learner would able to retain the information or their knowledge easily. Second is the opportunity of the learner to use variety of several instances in acquiring learning. So there are several types such as audiovisual, auditory, and visual form of learning. And lastly, each level of the cone above is based on signifies that the learner is a step further away from the real life experiences, from concrete to abstract form of learning. There are 11 stages of the cone of experiences, which are divided into 3 levels, from concrete to abstract. In the first level, which are the inactive, which can be done through a series of actions such as direct purposeful experiences, contrived experiences, and dramatized experiences. The second level, through a series of illustrations, such as demonstrations, study trips, exhibits, educational televisions, motion pictures, recordings, radio, and still pictures. And lastly, the symbolic, through this can be done through a series of symbols, such as visual symbols and verbal symbols. The concrete and abstract form of learning. The concrete form of learning is located at the lower level of the cone of experiences, which requires a lower cognitive skills, and the learners is basically learning in a direct experience, which are easily for them to understand what they are learning. Whereas in the abstract form of learning, which requires a higher form of cognitive skills, because learners should visualize or imagine what they are learning. Like for example, in reading a book, they should visualize what they are reading in order for them to understand what they are reading. The abstract form of learning does not mean the, the difficulty of learning, because it requires the higher cognitive skills as far it goes. It requires the learners to visualize or understand what they are reading or learn in order for them to retain the information. Direct and purposeful experiences. Direct or first-hand experience have a participation in the outcome and uses of all senses. In this picture, it's shown a science laboratory experiment which uses senses such as visual, auditory, tactile, and might as well the olfactory, which becomes easy for the learners to learn a certain topic or absorb a certain information, and this also become the easiest way to retain an information, because the information comes from the direct experience of the learners. Contrived experience. which uses models and mock-ups. In this form of learning, we are editing the reality. It is necessary when real experience cannot be used or are too complicated. Like for example, if the learners dreaming to become an architect or engineer in the future, they can use the Lego instead of a real equipments to create a buildings or infrastructure such as the Legos. Through the Legos, they can create a building such as skyscrapers, bridges, trains, and villages. The dramatized experiences, this is divided into two categories, which are the acting and observing. The acting, which is the actual participation of the learners, this is more concrete because they are portraying what they are tasked for them to do, and on the other hand, the observing or these learners who are watching the actors or the actors performing, they should connect. This is more abstract because they should connect the information what they perceive in order for them to understand what they are watching. Demonstration. Visualize explanation of important fact, idea, or process. Show how certain things are done. Like for example, in a classroom, teachers are teaching or instructing the students what they do. And for example, in a cooking project, the teacher is showing the process on how to cook a certain recipe. Field trips. During field trips, the learners are able to watch and witness what people do in the real situation. For example, they're able to observe an event that is unavailable in the classroom, like in a camping. They're able to know how to create a fire without using a match or a lighter. On the other hand, in the zoo, they're able to witness or learn on how to take care of a certain animals. Exhibits, something seen by the spectator. The ready-made and the homemade exhibits. The ready-made exhibits are basically can be seen in the museum, whereas the homemade experience are the projects being done by the learners. By means of this, the learners are able to make their ideas into reality, such as creating artworks, paintings, and so on. Educational television and motion pictures. Television. It brings immediate interaction with events from around the world. Like for example, the Asian learners were able to witness a winter season being projected on the television from the Western countries. And also can edit an event to create a clearer understanding than experience an actual event in the first hand. Motion picture can omit unnecessary or unimportant material, viewing, seeing, and hearing experience. Can recreate an event with simplistic drama that even slower students can grasp. So basically, motion picture, it is a series of pictures projected on a screen in a rapid succession with objects shown in a successive position slightly changed so as to produce an optical effect of continuous picture in which objects move. Recordings, radio, and still pictures. Recordings and radio can often be understood by those who cannot read. Like for example, those students who are illiterate and who cannot understand a certain information by means of reading. And might as well those students who are happy to listen to music. And on the other hand, still pictures, it is helpful to students who cannot deal with motion picture or pace of a real event or television. Visual symbols. This no longer involves in reproducing real situation. Chalkboard and overhead projector are the most widely used media. Also help students see an idea, event, or purpose. Also visual symbols, this setup is The most common form of instruction in the classroom, which there's a teacher who is teaching in front and writing on a chalkboard or using a projector to deliver the discussion. Verbal symbols. The two types of verbal symbols are written words and the spoken words. The written words are more abstract because the learner should visualize what is being written on the board or being projected on the screen. Whereas the spoken words is less abstract because they're able to understand directly what is the teachers being said or discussed to them. The cone of experience is a visual model, a pictorial device that presents the bands of experience arranged according to the degree of abstraction and not degree of difficulty. The farther you go from the bottom of the cone, the more abstract the experience becomes. On the learning activities, people generally remember 10% on what they read, 20% on what they hear, 30% on what they see, 50% on what they see and hear, 70% of what they say and write, and 90% of what they do. This means that the more concrete the information being perceived by the learners, the more chances it become easily for them to retain a certain information. On the other hand, the more abstract an information is, the more um, or it requires a higher cognitive thinking skills in order for them to attain or remember a certain information. Furthermore, on the learning outcomes, people are able to define, list, and describe if the information are being read or hear. Next is people are able to demonstrate, apply, and practice if the information is being viewed through image or watch videos, attend an exhibit, and watch a demonstration. And lastly, people are able to analyze, define, and create and evaluate an information if they're able to participate in hands-on workshops, design collaborative lessons, stimulate, model, or experience a lesson. And lastly, design, perform a presentation, or do the real thing. People always think differently. Some may think in concrete terms and some in abstract terms. Concrete thinking is refers to the thinking on the surface, whereas the abstract thinking is related to the thinking in depth. So, as a future teacher, we must know our students on their strengths and their weaknesses in the form of learning. By means of this, we're able to assess their needs in order for them to learn. Different kind of sensory aid often overlap and sometimes blend into one another. Like for example, a learner can learn in auditory, a learner can learn in visual, a learner can learn in tactile, or a learner can learn in both an audio-visual form of learning. One kind of sensory experience is not necessarily more educationally useful than another. Sensory experiences are mixed and interrelated. Too much reliance on concrete experience will actually obstruct the process of meaningful generalization. The best will be striking a balance between concrete and abstract, direct participation and symbolic experience for learning that will continue throughout the life. So as a future teacher, we must not um, spoon-feed our learners in order for them to use their critical thinking skills and use their cognitive skills to understand a certain information, because in some point they become dependent from us, from our idea, and they do not think on their own. Do not use only one medium of communication in isolation. Rather, Use many instructional materials to help the learners conceptualize his or her experience. For instance, in delivering the discussion, we can use a video or show them a video to catch their attention and some other educational videos that would enable them to conceptualize their experience. Next is avoid teaching direct at the symbolic level of thought without adequate foundation of the concrete. Learners' concept will lack deep roots in the direct experiences. Since the direct experience is the most basic one for the learners to attain knowledge, we must set a foundation in order for them to move in the second level, which is the symbolic level. As learners, as being studied here, concepts will lack deep roots in direct experience. When teaching, do not get stuck in the concrete. Strive to bring our students to the symbolic or abstract level to develop their higher order thinking skills. This rootless experience will not have the great generative power to produce additional concepts and will not enable the learner to deal with the new situation that he or she faces. And that's all for the content of my report, and I hope you learned something from the Edgar's Dale's Cone of Experiences.